Hey, what's up? Kalen here, and welcome to yesterday's Tweets Today, number 10. Numero 10. 10th day in a row live streaming, having fun with it, and working out the kinks as I go. So let's jump into it. First up, podcast studio in my house. So I've been working on beefing up the old podcast situation here with the mics and stuff, and I'm gonna just go ahead and get a full on. Well, when I say I'm gonna get a full on studio setup, I'm gonna basically get another one of these bad boys. Maybe get two more if I want to get real fancy, and then be able to have people do come over and do like a cool in person podcast. Most of the podcasts I've ever done, have been remote, with somebody, and those can be cool, but there's something really cool. Like a lot of the podcasts I really love to watch are like in person, so, and also a cool thing is that I can, whenever people are in town in Austin, they're always like, hey, let's go grab a drink, and I got to drive an hour downtown to meet up. So now I can just be like, yeah, come up to my podcast studio. Anyways, I got some cool responses from some people, and I want to give you your official invites to come on the podcast. Jonathan Bounds, my buddy Jonathan Bounds, is gonna here in the area we're gonna do one together soon, so that should be fun. Alan McGregor, you are invited, sir. Phil Collins, Kris, and Cy, you guys are officially invited next time you're in town, so that should be fun. All right, next up. Meaningful conversations on social media. Quick sip of coffee. So this is, I have been thinking about this a lot lately, and I saw some conversation around meaningful conversations on Twitter. And for some people it's like, oh, Twitter is like, that's where all the worst stuff is, and everybody's just constantly yelling at each other, and there's no real meaningful conversation there. And I've been talking about this in different ways, a lot lately, but I've really been, curating my Twitter feed to following, more people, and just like, really trying to keep, the stuff that's in my feed, stuff that's interesting, that's really driving curiosity, that's stuff that I really want to learn about, and also stuff that's positive, so if I see something that's toxic or that is just like, dragging me down, then I'm pulling that stuff out, and I think that it's like you can have a really negative experience on Twitter, and obviously a ton of people do, and you can also have an extremely positive experience, not only in terms of connecting with interesting people. I mean, look, almost all of the people I know in my professional network, which is also a lot of my friends, a lot of the people I'm closest to, because I have hardly any IRL friends, I've met through Twitter, and then we've met in person and things like that. And so it can be extremely powerful way not only to connect with people, to really learn a lot of new things, and to have great interactions. So, but I do think that things can also go off the rails. And I talked yesterday about replies, batching replies. And I think there's a lot of things that can be done to make your experience more, better, right? And so I think that to the extent we can do those things, we can have a better experience on social media. So that's that. All right, next up, remote is a massive talent arbitrage. So saw this tweet from Jeff Morris Jr., who, by the way, recently moved to work for Lambda School, which everybody was super pumped about. I don't know too much about Jeff, but he's a really impressive guy, and I love what Lambda School is up to. I was at a meetup last night talking with somebody about it. I love everything they do. So the tweet is, the future of work is remote. Most companies aren't ready for the change. Remote work requires new infrastructure and management styles that aren't taught in school. Companies who figure it out have a massive talent arbitrage opportunity. Every investor should encourage this. So I talk about remote all the time, and I basically say all these things a lot, and you're probably tired of hearing from me about it. But the way this particular tweet expressed it, I was like, oh my gosh, like it just expressed so concisely like pretty much everything I think about remote work all in one go. And it's so true. I mean, I see this day in and day out with Commerce Hero. I mean, the companies that everybody, like, to some extent, everybody hires remote. In some, I mean, like 60 to 80% of companies have either tried remote in some capacity, have tinkered with it, have played with it. They have one employee who used to work on site, and then they moved to Idaho or Hawaii, and now they work remote. Some capacity, right? But then the companies who, see, this is what's so great about this week. The companies who figure it out have a massive talent arbitrage opportunity. The companies that really get remote and really do it right, it's a game changer, right? I mean, look at Mediotype, for example. They've done an incredible job of, if you're familiar in the Magento space, almost everybody I talk to these days is like, holy cow, like the talent they've snapped up. I've been really happy that Commerce Hero, we've been able to help place some amazing developers there, but they have built a culture and a team that is just incredible. They get it, right? And there's a lot of companies that also get it. But to different extents, right? And so to the extent that companies really get this right, remote work requires new infrastructure and management styles that aren't taught in school. 100% correct. 100% correct. And it's hard to do, right? Like, it's easy for me I can see it. I can recognize it when I see it. Could I do it myself? No. I'm horrible at actually hiring and building infrastructure and teams for my own companies, right? I like to keep them small and simple. So it's not easy to do, or else everybody would be doing a great job of it, right? But it really is the future. I mean, I can't talk about this enough. And there's another topic on remote. I can't remember what order it's in my list here. Okay, so this is going to dovetail perfectly into the next one, which is mental health for remote teams. Next up. Okay, mental health for remote teams. This is a tweet from John Yongfook, Twitter handle YONGFOOK. Actually, it's a thread. Another remote team relationship building tool just popped up in my feed, amigobot.co. I absolutely think there will be some companies who win big in this space. Think calm.com, but for remote teams. I'll take a lot of trial and error. It'll take a lot of trial and error to get there, though. Next tweet. If you can provably improve remote team mental health and relationships, I think it's a very simple decision for an HR people ops director to approve company-wide adoption of $10, $20, $30 per user per month. The problem is no one knows what the solution looks like yet. So this is interesting because the whole mental health, I keep hearing, I mean, we see these apps like Calm and whatever the other one was that I tried, and you hear people say mental health. I mean, Gary Vee says this, mental health is going to be a gigantic industry over the next decade or two, in the same way that fitness has become a giant industry. It's going to probably eclipse that. And we see that starting to happen. And when I hear that, I go, yeah, that makes sense intuitively, but what does that actually look like? Like, okay, I see the meditation apps. I'm like, okay, I get that. But like, that in and of itself isn't going to make it this massive industry. But then when I saw this, I was like, yes, like I can see that, right? Because I do think, and so this is where it dovetails nicely to the previous one, is that I do think remote work is the future. It's just the fundamental economics make it make sense for the same reason that in the industrial industry, the fundamental economics made it sense for everybody to move to the city. Now, is it easy? No. Just talked about that from the perspective of how can companies get it? How can companies do it right? Execute. You have a massive talent arbitrage if you can do it right. And then on the individual side, there's challenges from a mental health perspective. It's hard. I've talked to people that say, I tried it. It doesn't work for me. I would never want to work remotely, right? I've done it myself for, probably 6 years now. And it's tough. You got to proactively be more social. Communication can be hard and whatnot. And to make matters worse, I mostly work solo, so I don't even have like a team of people that I hang out with online, so to speak. So if a company can come in and solve for that, I don't know exactly what that looks like. Maybe it's a combination of coaching. Maybe it's a combination of accountability, helping teams to be more, sort of intact with each other. Amigo bot is, it looks like it's just oh, I thought it was a landing page. It's not a landing page. Amigo bot builds stronger friendships between coworkers, and it's a Slack integration, right? So there's a couple of cool Slack integrations that help people to connect with each other better. I think that's super interesting. And so to the extent that can be solved for, like, imagine a Slack, right? That's just has bajillion users. They're charging $6 a month per user, and they've got, I don't know how many users Slack has, but millions probably, right? Imagine that for this thing where if it's just a must have. If you have a remote team, there's this solution you need, this app, it's a must have, and it again provably improves remote team mental health. I think is super interesting. So yeah, I think that's awesome. All right, next up, phone permanently on silent mode. I got to do a better job of these little teaser next up titles. Okay. Tweet from Andrew Chen. This is a poll. Is your phone permanently on silent mode? Got 6,400 votes. Man, I would, sidebar, I would love to be able to get 6,400 votes on my polls. That'd be awesome. I'm happy if I get 64 these days. 69% said yes. So I'm going to just put this up real quick on the screen. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the best way to get a visual, is just to look at that sucker. A lot of people say yes. And so I've done this myself, actually. And so it's on permanently on silent mode, and you can have it whitelist your contacts in your phone book. You can have it whitelist favorites only that you select. And so, like, I go in and in batch, like I do a lot of stuff in batch, right? I talked about doing social media replies in batch, right? I do my text messages in batch, which drives people crazy, wife included. I do my emails in batch, everything in batch, right? Batch all the things. But so every day I go in, I check my phone, and then all the non-whitelisted calls and things like that, like I keep getting, like, I get spam calls, and those used to stress me out because I get this call, it interrupts me. Maybe I'm driving, maybe I'm doing whatever I'm doing, right? We all have a bajillion interruptions that we're, fighting against and fighting to get our attention and our focus in the right place. And so, so I didn't realize so many people were doing this. I think that's a smart thing to do. I think, that might be something that you want to think about doing, because we just all have so many interruptions. Quick pet peeve though, depending on your phone implementation, I have a Pixel, and it like works like 80% of the time, but sometimes like you have a whitelisted contact and then like the call just doesn't come through, which is obviously frustrating. You don't want to miss important calls. I don't know if iPhone's better. But I hope that they get that locked down 100% solid, because I think it's a great feature. All right, next up, Slack versus Microsoft Teams. So I've been watching more videos from Scott Galloway, and which he's a super interesting analyst and professor and entrepreneur, and he talks about a lot of interesting stuff. Anyways, I saw this video on Slack versus Microsoft Teams, and how basically I took a couple of screenshots, but I forgot to post them for reference. But where are these screenshots? Basically, Slack, since its IPO, has sort of gone down. So the stock price has mostly gone down, and then he compares that to there's this wild chart that you got to see, and I'm gonna post this on Twitter, and I'm gonna try to start getting in these videos an edited version of the video that overlays these tweets on top of them, so that these situations are easier to see. But Microsoft Teams has explosive growth from the end of 2016 to now. It's overtaken Slack. And it's interesting because Slack, everybody uses Slack. People used to love Slack. I mean, there's still a lot of people, obviously, that love Slack. But there's been a backlash to it where it's like, okay, Slack is great. However, now I'm getting pinged constantly all the time about everything, right? I'm a huge fan personally, like I've talked about, of batching, right? So asynchronous communication, batching your email responses. There's a place for real-time communication. Going back to the remote team and the mental health thing, there's something powerful about having a group of people where you're real time connected and you can chat and you can send each other funny things and just stay connected. I think is important. But like getting pinged, like, hey, can you do this? Hey, what's the status on this? Hey, blah 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 blah. There's been a backlash against that. Also, I don't know much about how Microsoft Teams work. Honestly, I didn't even know Microsoft Teams existed until I saw this. So I'm a little out of the loop. So I don't know that much about how it works. I'm curious to learn more about it. I've seen some people replied on Twitter that said that they, use it and like it. I don't know if it's more asynchronous or not. I've seen some other alternatives to Slack that are sort of more asynchronous, but there's kind of this backlash to Slack where you're seeing people sort of try to position themselves as like an alternative to Slack in one way or another. But one thing in particular that I thought, from a pricing perspective, I've always felt like Slack was so expensive. Like, there's one community I'm a part of, and there's like a couple hundred active accounts, and so it's like $6.67 per user per month. It's like adds up quick, right? Like the free version is great, right? And like most everybody uses the free version, especially if you don't have a small team. But it's like I'm like $6 per user per month. That's insane. And Microsoft is $5 per user per month. Now I don't know. I think I believe that's for their entire Office suite, $5 per user per month. And then Teams is included in the Office suite. So like, look at the comparison on the pricing there, right? Like you're getting their entire suite for $5 per user per month versus Slack for $6.67. So like, I mean, there's a lot of factors probably playing into why their stock has gone down or whatever, but like pricing's got to be one of them. I mean, they are overpriced like a moaf. So I think that I think that's pretty interesting. All right. Last but not least, Pitch.com artwork aesthetic. So real quick, I failed to note which tweet this came from, but somebody tweeted this out, and I thought it was interesting. So, Pitch.com is it's a startup to basically make it easier for people to do pitches. Looks pretty interesting, but the tweet which caught my attention was that they have a different artwork aesthetic, which is interesting. They're kind of doing this 3D like Pixar style artwork. Which is interesting because like the tweet said, like, it's interesting to see an alternative to the kind of illustrations that we're familiar with. Like there's a certain style illustration, which is like, just because like, it's like everywhere, right? Like I'm thinking of Slack. I'm thinking of like, there's a certain aesthetic of like an illustration, which is really beautiful. And actually I saw something on Product Hunt the other day where there's a free library of illustrations in that style that you can use, which I was like, oh, that's super cool, right? Because those are really, really nice. But it's funny how, we talk about how on the web things are so uniform, like there's not as much uniqueness as there used to be, and it's like so true, right? Because like everybody has that same illustration style, and then but this is unique. Like you don't see this. Like you see these 3D things in like Pixar movies, but you never see them in a website design. So I was like, that's true. Like that is cool to see like a totally unique aesthetic. And so imagine this becomes the popular thing, and and then like 5 years from now, like that's all you see, and then there'll need to be something else. Anywho, that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and I'll see you tomorrow.